All right, here we are, back from the filler arc. Thank you all for bearing with just dealing with Colby by himself. I'm sure that was absolutely horrifying to only have one of us there.
It
But
was,
at
for me at
least,
least.
at least they had the good one there, you know.
No, you,
But
the viewers they spoke. Inbox was
mm,
flooded. Like, where is Jake? I need him. And I'm like,
uh,
dude, me too. So happy to have you back.
I'm happy to be back, man. There's a lot to talk about. With the why I was gone, right? You mentioned that it was for the bodybuilding show, and I think that's kind of the focus of today is just to talk about how the shows went, kind of the some of the immediate feelings because I'm still very close. I'm only about a week after the final show, and so we're close enough to still be feeling those things, but also have had enough time to reflect that I think we can talk about some interesting things as well. So I think you monopolized conversation last time, and I think this one is my turn.
It's all you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we could start with like maybe like the first show. Um, we were because the prep wasn't super eventful, to be honest. Like it was fairly smooth. I mean, we had to, you know, get in there and dig and do all the push kind of hard like you do. But it wasn't like there's not a bunch of crazy stories or anything like that really from the prep. It was pretty smooth. And I think the more interesting things are kind of what's come from that first peak week onward, right? So the first peak week that was at the beginning of November was great because we got to eat more finally, right? And it was just such a relief, and it was fun to like finally do a peak week. Like you do diets before, and you whatever, and then I tried to do a prep before, and it had to get cut short, and this time we finally made it to peak week and got to see what that was like. And it's pretty cool when you're that lean and depleted to eat 600 carbs in one day and just see the difference. um, that was very fun, and it was surprisingly difficult to get that much carbs. My fat was like 40, right? So
Wow.
like, or 38 or whatever it was, that it's kind of hard to get that many carbs with such little fat. You got to really uh, choose which foods to go for. So I was doing a lot of, I got like a really low fat cereal and some pretzels and some bread, like just super basic stuff. But it was nice. We did a front load. So we kind of did a big refeed day to start the week and then kind of tapered it back down. And by like Wednesday, Thursday, we were back down to where my carbs had been before peak week. And then we did one last little bump in the day before the show on that Friday. So that was interesting. I've never done that before, right? And we just, with my coach as well, it was like, well, we've never done a peak week, so we're just going to kind of see what happened, and going off of his experience and his intuition and, all the data he's gotten from other clients and stuff he felt confident that it would work well. But at the end of the day, you still got to try it and see, right? So that's what we did. And I looked really good the night before the show. It was the best I've ever looked, easily. And then or even the morning when I woke up the day of the show, I was like, okay, we're in good shape. I had some more carbs and some sodium and stuff to get in there. And I definitely overdid the sodium and the water the morning of, which I think was, one, just not having done it before, and two, maybe some nerves. I tend to drink a lot of water when I'm nervous. And so I was just, I didn't look bad, but I definitely spilled over a little bit. Um, I was still happy with the look overall, but it was like okay, we can be a little tighter, you know. So I think that first show experience, to kind of summarize, that feeling, it was really good. It was great information, great learning experience, but could have been dialed in a little bit more, right? That was kind of the thing, and I think that kind of reflected in the placings. I wound up, there was only 3 of us in the category that I was up there for. I did the novice and the open. There was only 3 of us in each of those, right? And I was right in the middle. I was second place in both of them. And, you know, I as annoying and arrogant as this sounds to say, I really think I should have won the novice. Just, you know, they were really rewarding. It seemed to me rewarding just pure size. That I think that, you know, my conditioning was on par with the other two guys, and my posing was way better, if I do say so myself. And but the other dude was just a little bit bigger, and you know, is what it is. And the judges' feedback was basically, yeah, bro, you need to get bigger. So it is what it is. But that's kind of what it was. But I really didn't care about the placing. It was just like getting there for the first time, right? Like going through, you got going backstage for the first time and doing the pump up and doing the going out there on the stage, and this whole room is looking at you as you're doing the posing, and you know, quarter turn to the right, and you just all the stuff. And it was a pretty surreal experience. You know, you see so many videos and Instagram posts and whatever, and it was just so, it just felt so surreal to be up there doing it myself finally, you know, after thinking about it for so long. And I got, you know, when they're doing the awards, it was I was so close to just like losing it, you know. Um Not even out of happiness or anything. It was just like such a, like, we did it, we made it, you know, just like that overwhelming. But I held it together because I didn't want to ruin the tan. And
True. Just get the
and
streaks going on and
yeah,
everything.
exactly. And so I get off stage and my girlfriend's there, and my friend Sean is there. Drove like 4.5 hours to get there or something just to watch. Um, it meant so much to me to have them there, and I just hugged them and was just crying a lot. And you know, it was just such an awesome moment that that first show, like I'll never forget that, dude. That was amazing. So I think from that whole experience, it was so awesome in so many ways. But I'm also, as we got, you know, I had 2 weeks until the next show, so I had some time to reflect and think on it, and my coach had some time to look back and make some tweaks. So we were able to improve for the second one, which is nice. But I think I'll pause there. That's kind of a lot. And do you have any thoughts, anything like that, or should I just roll right into to
Yeah,
show
I
two?
can. I have some questions to poke a little bit more to learn
Okay.
because like, and you probably talk a little bit about some of the stuff too. But I think yeah, it's you only get one first show, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's gonna be very special to you. And I think what what's a piece of advice you have for other people who are gonna go to their first show? I don't know, maybe like me, or just anyone in general too, right? Like, what's something that one just general piece of advice, or even this can be a separate answer or combined, where it's like something that you aren't really told and wish were told about that first show, so that people can go into.
Yeah. Okay. Very easy for that second piece.
Mm.
The spray tan is really cold. I did not anticipate that, and that was the most uncomfortable bit of the whole process. Because you go into the back room, right, and it's just, you know, you walk in and they're like, "Here's your sock," right?
Singular question
To
mark?
singular, to cover yourself for the person to spray tan you, right? So, um, you go back and there's just a bunch of 99% naked dudes back here, and they roll you in one at a time, hit you with the spray tan that's ice cold, and then you go stand over here and do a different little tented thing with a fan blowing on you to dry it. So like it's even more cold now, right? Um, and then so you do that the night before, and then the morning of the show you go back and do it again. And they put 2 coats on me the day of, so I had to do it twice. So that's the thing I didn't know. And yeah, it was organized, right? They had a good system, but it was just, whew, yeah, chilly.
No.
The other tan stuff, by the way, is exactly what everybody says, right? Like once it's dry, you put your big baggy clothes on, and then, you know, you want to make sure that you bring your own sheets, pillowcases, whatever, if you're staying in a hotel or an Airbnb, because it will get on things. So I'm very glad that I brought my own stuff, and I didn't have any issues. But I certainly noticed, like, if I, they get it on your hands too, right? And then I wanted to eat something, but you don't want to wash your hands completely because you'll ruin so I was like carefully washing my fingertips just to be able to grab something. And then, you dab it with a paper towel or whatever, and the tan still gets all over so like it would definitely get on stuff. But yeah, it's just, weird little, then I started to learn, like, okay, just don't eat with your hands on anything. Use silverware even for, stuff like that. Or when they spray your face, it gets on your lips, right? So I don't want to be like getting that in my mouth. So the second time I was like, okay, I got a little paper towel, just dab the lips. For me, I wear contacts, so like I had to be really careful not to ruin it when I was doing that, and so weird little tan stuff that I figured out. Advice, honestly, dude, I think it's very similar to powerlifting, where it's like just have fun. The first one is just about the experience, getting one under your belt, learning what's up with, like, where to go. Even, you find the venue, but then you got to figure out where to go in the venue. And then but everybody, there's a system there, right? Like, there's people that are very helpful. They'll be like, hey, at this time you need to be over here, whatever. So like, listen to the people who are running the show. Make sure you have all of your times. You have a certain time that you're supposed to do your polygraph and a time you're supposed to do your tan. And for me, they were all running behind, so I was like frantically trying to get there on time just to have to sit there and wait. But still much better to do that than to actually be late. But make sure you know what times you're doing things, and all that kind of stuff. Be organized. Have a bag with you that's got like some snacks and a resistance band or something to do the pump up, and some water, and that sort of thing. So a little bit of pre-planning was helpful, but otherwise it's like, try to relax, like, it's what I really felt also in that first one is I was like, it's not that serious, like, I didn't have to be so scared of being late, or I didn't have to be so scared of where am I going to go, or do I have enough food with me, or do I have too much food, or all those kinds of things. Or even, you go out there to do the posing, I could totally see a lot of people just being anxious about that part, and just being there on the stage and everyone's looking at you. But I barely noticed, right? It felt like I was just doing my posing like in my apartment. But now I just had somebody else tell me quarters turn to the right rather than me just do it. And then I think one final thing that is a big takeaway from all of it is practice your posing a lot before the show. Practice a lot, a lot, a lot. I can't say it enough, right? Because, I think particularly in the second show, I think my posing is what helped me place where I did. And it makes such a massive difference when you're just looking at the people up there, like, again, not to toot my own horn, but like, I practiced a lot for the purpose of, like, this is the one thing I have full control over, right? And so I want to make sure I control it, and I want to make sure that when they call out a pose, I get into it immediately. And I want to make sure that I can hold it the whole time and not get shaky, not have to reset, not do any of that stuff. And I think that helped me a ton because other people were doing that. It took forever to get into a pose, and they're just standing there like kind of slouched while they figure it out. And that moment where you're slouched, you don't look very big. Whereas I'm over here already posing and stuff like that, right? Or maybe I'm holding it and I look like a statue, but this other dude has to like relax, take a breath. He's shaky, and it just makes such a big difference. So I think that's the other big thing is, as annoying as it is to spend a bunch of time doing that, it can really, really pay off. So.
That's super helpful. I think there's so much there, and I think kind of like to summarize that first part is the little things do matter, right? Especially those things are like, okay, prepare, have food ready, be expecting things to be late, because while they're small, if there's a lot of small things that are going on, and it could very well get to you, especially when you're in such a just heightened state, as you had said, and that could be a nervous state too. So all these
Yeah.
things can compound and make it even worse. And then that can then translate to your posing being off or just your mental being off, things that still and can very well have a difference in just the outcome and then also the experience. So yeah, I think it's just having that kind of plan of attack early on, talking to your coach about it early on, all those things, it can be super helpful. And of course, to keep reminding yourself that, as you said, it is the first show. So there's going to be some things that go wrong or just different and things to learn. And that's also very much okay and part of it. And that just means next time around, you're better equipped for that and you're going to crush it. So I think, yeah, that's really good to hear. And then the posing part, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you too. Because when I went to WNBF Worlds to spectate, you hear it all the time. Posing matters. Practice your posing. And you're like, yes, I understand. But you don't understand until, and this is me just observing it, like, damn, it matters. So I'm sure for you, actually doing it, you're like, oh, damn, it really, really matters. And it's like, you can't undervalue that anymore, right? You really do need to practice because, like, you hit the nail on the head there saying it's the one thing you really can control. So, put in the time, put in the effort and be ready for it. And maybe even slightly, quote unquote, over prepare. Because what I had noticed for the posing stuff, especially it was a huge class. There's like maybe 14 people on stage, right?
Yeah.
The endurance you need to hold these poses, and like I think it was like 40 minutes you're on stage sometimes holding a pose. That's insane.
It's crazy.
And like that's a skill in itself, right? And that's an art, and that's something you can practice. So it's you should do it, right? Put in that time. It's 100% worth it.
100%. And it's like I'm glad you brought that up too, because I should have been more clear. Like it's not just can you get into the position and display your physique nicely, right? Which the poses are going to look slightly different person to person. Maybe you emphasize a certain muscle group or try to hide one that's not as good or whatever. But it's also how long can you hold the pose? And the bigger the class is, the longer you're going to have to hold it because they need to compare everybody. So like my first show, there's only 3 of us up there. I was holding the pose for like less than 10 seconds. It was nothing. Okay. And I had gotten to the point where I could hold it in my posing practice leading up to the show. I was holding everything for 30 seconds, and then hitting the next pose immediately, like no breaks really in between, and which took a long time to build up to. Like it's exhausting, but then the second show, there's I think 7 of us up there, right? So I had to hold it longer, and then like you're saying, I can only imagine when there's 12, 13, 14, whatever. Like there's it's so much. So it's really, it's not just the skill of the positions and stuff, but it's how long can you hold it, and it's also like I didn't mess with this yet, right? Like I still need to do this in the future, but like the transitions between poses. My transitions were very, very simple, and it was basically what's the most efficient way can I get into it without looking bad. Whereas the next step is adding a little flourish here and there, right? Like what's a little way you can show something off. Because I think it's important to remember, like every moment you're on the stage, you're being judged. It's not just when you're in the middle of a pose or something. So yeah, dude, it's so underrated, and big shout out to like Jeff Alberts, who always emphasizes it a ton. That's what really like put it on my radar initially. And then luckily some of the people around me, like my friend Matt, for example, who's a really, really good posing coach, he helped me a ton. That just other people being like, bro, like I get that you're busy, but you gotta practice this too,
because it's not only is it a skill, but it's the art side of bodybuilding, and that's a big part of it too, right? And because sometimes, I don't know if maybe there's me that I've heard it before, but when comparing like powerlifting and bodybuilding, powerlifting is like, okay, yes, you do a lot of work beforehand, but it very much is dependent on what you lift on the platform, which makes sense. Whereas some people may think bodybuilding is the opposite. It's like, hey, you have to do all the work early on, and then when you get on stage, it's whatever. And like to some degree, sure, I could see where that comes from, but like that doesn't mean that the posing in the day of, you still need to show up and do it well. And like you said, give homage to your work, right? Like you've worked so hard for this, you got to show it, right? And like I said, it could affect placing, and it could just be that too, but you want to show what you got, right? And that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's like the nice thing about doing the 2 shows was that I could look back not only on like the peaking process, but also on the posing, and think about you know, like, oh, when I did this on stage, it felt really uncomfortable, and like, let me, you know, you can change that kind of stuff too, right? And you just get more I was so much more comfortable the second time, just being because you've done it before, right? It doesn't feel as scary. But yeah, you know, so we come off of that first show, and it was like, okay, well, we got 2 weeks. How do we want to handle this, right? Because we'll have the peak week, right? So we got this 1 week that, like, what do we do with this? And it was basically like, we're here, dude. Let's do it, right? So we dug in there as the hardest that we had the whole time. My carbs were like 70 for a few days. It was, you know, pretty low, lots and lots of cardio, all this stuff, and it was, you know, I'm not gonna lie, you know, it definitely got tough, but at the same time, it was like, this is the last hard week, period, right? Because then I get peak week, and then I get the post show stuff that is hard in its own right, but, you know, at least you get a little bit more food. And so we did it. We lost another like pound and a half over that week, which was nice. Some of that was probably water from the extra carbs from the peak week before it, but nonetheless, we lost a little bit more weight. And the peak week itself, we did another front load for the second one, but with some adjustments. So basically so the first time, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like 500 or 600 on day one, and then it went down to like 300-400, and then like 200 or 300, and then back down to like 150 or whatever. And then up, I think the day before it was like 200 or 300, something like that. So we had like this spike, and then came down, and then came back up a little bit more, a little sine wave, if you will.
Yeah.
And the second time, what we did was we spiked it higher on day one. So I had like 715 carbs on that first day, which was so much fun.
10 times more than what you had.
Literally.
Yeah.
And then the next day we cut it way back to like 180 or something. And then just had it low for a few days, and then that little bump the day before. So it was basically, rather than having the spike and then the gradual fall down and then the little bit at the end, bigger spike, cut it way back, and then the little thing at the end. So idea there being, you know, fill out completely and actually purposely overshoot it a little bit, spill over just a little bit, then have the time for it to dissipate and clean up while I'm still really full of glycogen, and then, you know, do that last little correction there at the end. And it worked great. We definitely peaked better, definitely looked better. I was a lot, like, I just didn't have that kind of softer, more watery kind of look. You just look leaner, right, when you're more full and crisp and that sort of thing. So that was very gratifying to see. That was really nice. And I also made it a point to not do as much sodium and water the day of the show. And I think that also helped. And then, you know, we get up there, and I definitely felt much more confident, like I said, just because I'd done it the once before. And I felt confident that the peak was a little bit better. And I was like, okay, cool. And so the vibes were good, man. It was a hometown show, right? So
Yeah.
I'd flown back home to do this, and some friends out there in the crowd, my mom and dad were there. And that was just awesome, dude. It was awesome. And placing was better. I got second again, but this time it was out of 6 or 7 guys. That again, I think was driven mostly by the posing. Just because, you know, kind of similar conditioning. I was probably, you know, towards the top of people who were lean, at least in the novice. In the open, there was 1 or 2 guys who were just absolutely shredded. I was like, good for you. One of them won a pro card. It's like, good for you, man. But you know, just getting out muscled by a fair few of them. But the posing, I think, hooked me up a little bit there. And but again, you know, the placing was like, it's really secondary to all the rest of this stuff. It's so much more about the process and the journey. But I will say, now that I've been to the destination, right? Now that I've been there, I care about that more than I thought I would, right? It still is very much about the process, first and foremost. But I want to do as good as, like, hell yeah, I want to get a pro card at some point, right? Like, of course, I want to do better next season than I did this time. And I think that I was talking to Eric, actually, Eric Helms, and he was saying, in his experience, a lot of the people who push so hard into it's all about the process thing are the ones who often are trying to not get too wrapped up in the destination because they really do care. They just don't want to get lost in it. And I was like, there's probably some truth to that,
I hate and love how much Eric just knows both of us so well too. Because
Yeah, right.
as he's saying that to you and as you're saying it to me, I picture him saying it to me and like knowing that I need to hear that too. So thanks,
Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah.
And you too.
Yeah. And I think, and my coach knew it too, right? Because he even told me the day of, it was like, the process has been amazing. You already won. You already, it's all about that. So proud of you. You made it here. But now that you're here, go take some heads. Right. And I was like, oh yeah, like we're going to, so he knew it too. He knew that button was there. And so that's been a really cool realization that I do, in fact, want to be a competitive bodybuilder and not just a process oriented bodybuilder. Not that there's anything wrong with that by any means. That's amazing. But I do like both.
It's got me fired up just hearing you say that because I'm like,
Yeah,
cool,
man.
that's nice. Because 2028, right? We're gonna go out there. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
26 or whichever one comes out. But yeah, I think
Exactly.
that's awesome. It's, again, just a lot of good things there. I was curious. Did you get feedback from that show from the judges? Anything different or
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
no.
I imagine it's going to be similar.
Mhm.
Just get a little bit bigger. What I heard from one of my Matt, actually, again, he's been coaching forever. Almost. I shouldn't say that, but primarily bodybuilders, and tons of them compete and all this kind of stuff. And he was like, I think you could have even ate more and been a little bit more full. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's cool. So that was a little bit of feedback, and I trust his judgment on that sort of thing. But I haven't heard anything from the judges yet.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear that too. Because like you said, it can be helpful to know that and to see and something you touched on earlier too is that you just never know like what the judges are gonna favor or what they're gonna feel that day. Maybe they're hungry, right? There's that kind of idea of you see like judges from like lawyer cases and actual stuff where if this before lunchtime they like give out different and potentially wrong hearings, sayings, whatever it is. So it's like I'm curious if that happens in bodybuilding to some degree. And I'm sure it is because I kind of witnessed that as well at Worlds, where it's like at the end of the show, more mistakes happening. So it's again something you've always said all the time and is really resonates and is important to know is that like you can't control those things, right? It's gonna happen. So like you need to accept that early on and just know it's gonna be a factor. And you can do the things you can control, the posing, the mental strengthening and all those stuff. Just and if you can show up and just be proud of everything you've done and how you've been, doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? And I'm sure it's okay. You could still feel a little bit upset about placing all these other things, but it's like to what degree and all that is where that work early on comes helpful.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think so. That's kind of the season recap, right? I guess of sort of how the shows went, what we did. A little bit more X's and O's kind of focused stuff, which isn't super helpful because everyone's going to be different, but hopefully it's at least interesting, right?
It's interesting and it has been helpful, at least for me as a competitor going into it. So I think other people will get it as well. Yeah.
Cool. So then I think there's sort of two directions we could go here, right? Like I think we're in, like we said at the start, I'm like a week after that last show got done. So I'm close enough to where I'm just transitioning into the recovery phase, which has its own interesting things to discuss, of course. But I'm also far enough away that I've been able to reflect a bit and think about, larger scale takeaways from the prep and the life lessons and stuff like that. So what do you think would be, where do you want to go first?
Let's do the recovery because I think it'll be nice to end on the takeaways.
Yeah, makes sense. So basically the strategy, I'll start with that, maybe the strategy, the plan, and then sort of how I'm feeling, how it's going, etc. So the plan that we set out was basically this week was, well, the night of the show, you get off stage. I had to wait a few hours because they had like, the setup was the judging rounds, and then for every category, and then at the end they brought you back up for your individual routine and for the awards. So there was like a 3 or 4 hour gap in the middle there that they had cookies backstage, so I had one cookie, I was like, I want to celebrate this. But that was it, because I was like, okay, I don't want to mess with the look. And so after all of that is done, then it was basically like, if you want some food, get some food. It's fine, right? And then the next couple of days that I was going to be staying with my parents for 3 days before I came back home. So that was kind of basically the idea there, at least in my situation, was just relax, basically. Like, if don't restrict yourself like crazy. Feel okay saying yes to things, but don't make yourself throw up. You know what I mean? Like, just kind of go based off of how you feel, which I think for me worked really well because of how I was psychologically feeling at the time. Other people probably need a little bit more guidance, a little bit more structure. Other people, even less is fine, right? But at least for me, the spot that I was in, that was kind of the plan, was take those few days, have some meals with your family. Maybe not every meal is crazy, obviously, right? But like, if you want to have a nice dinner or something cool, or my coach knew also the plan was the Sunday, the day after the show, my dad was going to cook Thanksgiving dinner because it was right before Thanksgiving. So like that was kind of the plan. And then throughout the week, that was really the sort of the plan for the whole week. And then to begin today, as we record this on Monday, for this week to kind of get back onto a structure based on how I'm feeling at the end of that first week. So what I ended up doing was, oddly, I really, 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 really was craving vegetables after the show, because I had eaten cereal and pretzels all day, and because you need the carbs and sodium and low fat and low fiber, all this stuff. So can we just go to Subway? Like, because I also wanted something quick, because we had a 2-hour drive back to my parents' place, and it was already 8 p.m. or whatever. So we went to Subway. It was delicious. And I did get the little bag of Doritos, which was pretty nice.
Also,
But
thank you, Subway, for sponsoring this episode. No, just
yeah,
kidding.
shout out Subway.
We're shilling for them, right? They might as well.
Yeah. Dude, I would kill for a Subway sponsorship. That'd be amazing. I would eat it every day.
Not to derail, but I was a sandwich artiste for 3-4 years. Loved it. Great time.
Very nice. I love Subway so much. It's unironically one of my favorite restaurants.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. It can be there.
Like the cost, the macro friendliness,
It's just don't let Mike's orders hear this, because I'm sure he's gonna have a say about this. So.
Probably. So that's what we did that night, and then that's all I had. Just went after that. I just wanted to go shower, get the tan off, and go to sleep. That was the biggest thing. Which, by the way, quick aside, that shower after the show where you're getting most of the tan off is glorious. It feels so good because you just feel dirty, right? You got all the tan, you're sweaty. Anyway, so day after the show, I wake up, and I had gotten to this point, towards the end of prep. I kept telling my girlfriend, I was like, and my coach, I was like, man, I don't know. I just don't have these crazy cravings right now. I feel like I can really nail this recovery period. I think I'm going to do great. And I really strongly felt that, but at the same time, you don't know until you're there, right? Until the carrot at the end of the stick has been gotten. And now that deadline's not there anymore. That accountability is not really there anymore. Does it just open the floodgates, or do I in fact feel fine? So I woke up, and I was like, okay, today's the day where I'm going to figure this out, right? I'm going to see what's up. And I just wasn't hungry right away, which is normal. I usually don't eat for a few hours when I wake up. And so I'm just doing whatever. And a few hours go by, and I was like, I should probably eat something. There's some chicken breast in the fridge, and my parents have apples, and I'll just have that. So I literally had some chicken breast and a big apple and like a couple rice cakes. And I was like, I'm chilling, right? It was fine. And then my brother's been on this big kick where he's making his own beef jerky, and which is awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's super lean, right? Like he gets really lean meat for it. So I snacked on some of that kind of throughout the day, and that was really all I ate the rest of the day until dinner when we had Thanksgiving. And I was like, okay, now is where I figured out, right? Breakfast was whatever. Now's where I figured it out. And I went into it trying to be mindful. I was like, okay, let me get a moderate plate of food because, I want to enjoy the food. I want to be here with my family and have this Thanksgiving, but I don't want to just go crazy. And I'm less likely to get up and get a second plate of food than I am. Like, I will finish what's on my plate, right? But anyway, it's a bigger, there's more inertia to go up and get another plate of food. So I do this, and part of me wanted some more food. Part of me was like, whatever, I'm satisfied. But I was so full. I could not have eaten more if I wanted to. And I was like, how do people do the crazy, just endless black hole eating thing that everyone talks about? Like, how is that physically possible? I don't understand. I was so uncomfortably full. It was hard to sleep with just a moderate plate of food, which also makes sense, right? Like, your stomach shrinks when you're eating these small meals for so long. So that was it with that. I was like, okay, well, that wasn't bad. No floodgates, I wake up day 2 and we go out to like this kind of family diner breakfast thing. That's like a big thing me and my brother and my dad like to do when we're all together. And I had like a skillet and a pancake that was like nothing crazy. It was a lot fattier than I'm used to having in one meal, right? You cook there's butter in the pancake probably, and there's, they cook it all in oil and whatever. But it wasn't like a crazy amount of food. And I didn't even eat lunch because I was still kind of full from that. And then my dad went out and got a steak to cook for dinner. I was like, sweet, fatty, but like, otherwise not crazy at all. And then the next day I had like Greek yogurt for breakfast, and then snack on beef jerky, and then reheat some Thanksgiving stuff for dinner. But again, it wasn't crazy, still kind of a smallish, less than I would eat on a normal Thanksgiving. And then that's all the days that I was there. I was like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't. And my my parents are not fitness people, right? They're just normal people. So their cupboards are full of all the junk foods, all the snacks, all the everything. And did I exert a little bit of willpower to not eat that stuff? A little bit, but not nearly as much as you would think. And that was such a great feeling, just to feel like I wasn't out of control, because I've been there before, right? I've been in that place where I feel like I can't stop eating. I can't stop thinking about food. It's immense willpower to try to not eat everything in sight. And you just feel so out of control and so chaotic. And you start to feel like you're letting yourself down because you're ruining all this hard work that you did, and, all this stuff. And it feels horrible, right? So I'm very grateful that I didn't have that, at least so far, this time. And then, so then the next day is when I'm going home. So I hit a Chipotle in the airport because I was like, I got to eat dinner. And I've been sitting on this Chipotle gift card for months, So I did that. I just got a bowl. I didn't even get a burrito. I just got a bowl. And then the next day I step on the scale, right? I'm finally home. I'm like, I haven't weighed myself since before the show. I don't, let's see what happened. And I was like 2.5, 3 pounds over stage weight. And, how much of that was just bloating and water and whatever, right? So some of it was probably glycogen. Some of it was fat, certainly, right? But I was like, wow, I couldn't have wished for much better, right? I was able to share these meals with my family, have a great time, feel relaxed, feel unplugged, recharge. And I come home and I'm not a whale. It was great. And then we had another Thanksgiving the next day. So, and it's kind of been a similar thing. Now I think I've been hovering on 164 the last few days. And on stage, I was like 158 to 160, depending on, I didn't weigh myself after the final carb up or whatever, right? So I was somewhere in there. So I'm somewhere in that neighborhood of, 5, 6-ish pounds, something like that up. That again is fat, absolutely, but also is water and glycogen and all that stuff. So that's pretty nice. Still no crazy cravings, still no crazy bottomless hunger. I am thinking about food, right? And I'm like, I see the commercials for Domino's and for the ice cream and the whatever, right? And do I want it? Yes. And do I have to like be intentional with saying, I'm not going to eat that right now? Yes. But it's not crushing to me. to do that, right? It doesn't feel like it's just this horrifying task to avoid eating, and that's pretty darn nice, to be in what feels like a healthy and mature place, like as a mature diet or bodybuilding, whatever, right? Just that I can make those what at least at this point feels like a very rational decision, and there's no urgency. There's no that food's going to be there. I don't have to go rush out and eat it all right now. Do I want pizza and all this stuff? Of course I do, but like I can have it in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. It's not going anywhere. And if I can space it out, it'll just make my transition a lot smoother. It'll make my body image and mental health a lot better. And that's a bigger priority to me right now than that acute in the moment happiness of that hot melty cheese and the crust and the pepperoni. Speaking of which, I will get Domino's before too long, I'm sure, because I love it. But anyway, that's kind of how the recovery phase has been so far. Today is day one of being back on like structure, and I did track the last couple of days. I just wanted to kind of see what I was naturally eating. I didn't want to change how I was eating, but I wanted to at least see where I was naturally falling, and it was somewhere in the 200 protein, 230 to 250 carbs, kind of 50 to 60 fat, something like that. That I was like, hey, if that's what I'm naturally doing this first week after, like, that's pretty nice, so we have targets now that are kind of similar to that, and that's kind of the plan at this point for the next at least few weeks of this, is to try to just kind of ride that out and slowly reintroduce some other foods, because I am trying to be aware of my intestinal system, all my digestive system, and it's very used to digesting certain things, very not used to digesting certain things, and I'm not trying to live in the bathroom. So gradually reintroduce some stuff, which is also helpful from a caloric standpoint, of course, right? And try to not maintain that same level of leanness. Like, obviously I'm going to gain some weight, but just try to rein in the weight gain to an appropriate level that still feels good and healthy and sustainable, but is avoiding the massive overshoot that a lot of people can find themselves in. So
yeah, it sounds like you're in such a good spot, right? Mentally, physically, all that, and it's not easy to do. So you should be proud of that. I think that's really awesome, and I'm curious, what do you think led to that? Did you spend a lot, like, when did you start talking about the recovery phase, right? And it's something you planned out early on, and like, how did you navigate that? So like, or just in general, what had led you to this point where you can be this successful in that sense, you think?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this a lot yesterday. I think it's two things. So I've been thinking about it for most of the prep, to be honest, because like I said, I've been there before, right? When I did this attempted prep back in 2020, and then, we stopped, and it felt so bad. It felt so bad. So out of control, couldn't stop eating, couldn't stop thinking about food, all this stuff, and then all the emotional impacts of all of that, right? Just mental health torpedoes, body image torpedoes, just all of it. And anxiety gets so high because, like, I feel I can't control anything, not even myself, and so it was very important to me to have a different experience this time. So kind of the whole way through, I've been trying to wrap my head around, right now I have all this structure and I have this thing at the end of the road that's keeping me focused, but that will go away at some point, the end of November, and I'm going to have to transition back. And so, like, be mentally preparing for those feelings are not just possible, but probable, right? Most people have that, the cravings and the hunger and everything. So, prepare yourself ahead of time that you might experience those feelings again. Let's start thinking about, how can I try to navigate that stuff? And as time went on, and during the prep itself, and I was continuing to not have crazy hunger and cravings, like, it was a normal amount for a prep diet, right? But it wasn't like excessive and really, really, really hard to deal with. that I started to be more and more encouraged about, like, I feel like I can do this pretty well. And, let me start to really prepare myself for, like, still being aware that those feelings are possible, but how, based on how I feel now, like what's an appropriate game plan, basically. And so to me, what came to mind was the urgency thing of I will want to eat these foods again, but I just don't have to rush. There's no, it's gonna be there. And it connected oddly to, in the prep itself, I was so focused on the daily process because it's so overwhelming to think about the whole thing, right? I mean, I prepped for 7 months. So like, to me, what helped me a lot was to just say, like, this is just what I'm doing, right? Like, it's not, there's not excuses, there's not reasons, there's not justifying certain things or rationalizing, right? Like, this is just what I'm doing, dude. I'm just eating this meal. I'm doing this cardio. It's, there's no, oh, I wish I didn't have to do it. It's just what I'm doing. So that, I think that helped a lot during the prep itself, to not be constantly fighting against my own psychology the whole time. But I was like, just continue that, right? Like, just when you get into the recovery phase, just, well, this is just what I'm doing. Let's see how that works. And so far it's worked very well. I keep just thinking about, like, I don't know if it's a downer of an example, but I just keep thinking about, like, Heath Ledger when he played the Joker, about, like, you just get so lost in it that's your reality. And it's, when I got off stage the second show, my dad was like, you're done. Like, how's it feel? And I was like, it doesn't feel like I'm done. Like, it felt like this is what the rest of my life was going to be like. Not in a bad way. It's just, this is it, So, I think that approach has helped quite a bit. Now, the danger with that, right, is that you get too locked in and you never change, you never regain the weight, and you're perpetually too lean, and, hormonally things go downhill and all this stuff. You don't build muscle, etc. So it's important for me to transition away from that. But I think these early weeks of the recovery phase, when I'm kind of fragile, I think it's still being helpful. So that's one big piece. And I think the other sort of physiological piece was more so from my coach, which was basically just not running me into the ground for the prep, and making sure that I wasn't an inch from cracking when we were done. Like, it was, we did what we had to do, but at the same time, could we have pushed harder? Yeah, right. Like, I could have done more cardio. I could have eaten less. But I think he also was being conscious of, how I'm going to be feeling at the end, and trying to make sure that it's not just this rubber band that's going to snap back super, super hard. And as I do more preps and as I develop that skill, we can push harder and harder, right? So yeah, I think it's those two things, I believe, are what have been helpful. Oh, I guess a third smaller thing, the obvious thing, is just your environment, as we talked about in a previous episode, right? Being that, like, at least now that I'm back home, the food that I have easy access to are things, like, I bought some things that I wasn't eating a ton of during prep, but, like, there's still, my freezer isn't full of frozen pizzas and ice cream and all this, right? Like, just trying to make sure that some of those foods that are not bad to have, but I probably want to pace it out a bit, are just harder to access to increase that barrier a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's, again, it's such a testament again to just giving yourself more than enough time, right? Like you said, it was 28, 30 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
some people think, okay, here we go, 16-week prep. And if you do that, that's when you have to push very hard. And that's when you start feeling things a lot more. And that's when other things come at sacrifice, right? Maybe you lose a little bit of muscle along the way. It's just, it sucks a lot more, right? And I think giving yourself more than enough time is just so helpful for that reason, for all those reasons, right? The mental game too, and the physical game. It's just like, the best case scenario, you show up and you just eat up into show, right? Like, you show up early and then cool, like I said, eat up, right? Dirk Remmert, Nunez, they talk about it all the time, and it's like, that would be fantastic. But that doesn't often happen because life happens, right? And it's gonna, have its way. So it's like, if you account for that for 8 weeks, whatever it is, just give yourself more enough time, then it's just gonna make that actual journey that much better, that post journey as you're experiencing now that much better. So it's super important to just really think about that super early on. And that's why, like, we talk about this long game all the time, right? A year out plus of just, making sure that you respect the game of bodybuilding, respect yourself, your coach, right? All these things, because it's not easy. It's not like people don't just say, hey, yeah, this is bodybuilding because they just decide to get into it, right? There's a lot more behind it. And I think when we start giving that more respect, it's just more helpful for all these ways. So yeah, I think it's really cool to see that, and you're to be a testament to that yourself, which is awesome. And it's to hear you talk about it, it really solidifies that. So it's, yeah, I like that aspect too. Just plenty of time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude, it's so important because, like you said, like stuff's gonna happen, right? That's out of your control. You're gonna have weeks where you don't lose weight when you, on paper, everything was like, oh, you should have, or sometimes it doesn't even make sense. There's no, easy explanation. It just kind of is what it is. Prep is so weird, dude. It's so weird. So yeah, that time is very helpful for many reasons.
And yeah, and as you said right there, and even before too, it's because a lot of the times I think we talk about, just thinking about things, being ahead of the game, like reflection. There's a lot of thought involved. But as you just said too, sometimes no thoughts is the way to go. And like
Yeah.
no attachment, rather, right, to these to these thoughts, to these actions, to these results, just being like, I am just doing this. Because sometimes you can be so over analytical or so much in your head, so much thinking going on, that can be a negative in itself, right? So
Yeah.
it's just, I think, really remembering that these thoughts and these approaches and the whole journey of the prep is very much that spectrum too. There are going to be times where you're going to need to be very thoughtful, right? But where along that spectrum you lie, that's going to change too. And knowing that and using that as a tool to your benefit, I think, is very important, because it's only going to help you.
Absolutely. And like another thought that comes up is like the sort of, like you're saying, balancing how attached you are to certain thoughts or certain things, how much thought's going into it, how much is just sort of not autopilot, but just kind of doing it. I think another thing that people can run into is the people who are like constantly searching for motivation the whole way through, where it's like there's nothing wrong with that, right? Finding things that motivate, whether it's looking at people's physiques or watching, some sort of video or listening to something or whatever. But I think it's important to not go overboard with it, because you can burn yourself out and it's no longer as motivating when you need it the most at the very end, right? So it's like another one of those things where you're kind of pacing yourself a little bit, and I like for me, I think that's another one of the things that I'm really grateful for with the "this is just what I'm doing" approach, that I didn't need the motivational stuff for the longest time, and deep into it, I needed it here and there, particularly for cardio, just because it's so, it can be just boring. And, when you're not mentally engaged, like training is still fun, right? It gets really hard. Leg day is not really fun anymore by the end. At least it wasn't for me. But the cardio just kind of it's just boring. So the ability to still call on something to give me acute motivation was really nice. And so I think different people have a different capacity, tolerance, whatever word is correct there, for how much of that stuff they can spam themselves with before it stops working. It's kind of like caffeine, right? Like, you keep doing it, you're going to need more and more to get the same effect. Then eventually it just doesn't seem to work as well anymore. I think it's the same. So it just, I don't know, something to bear in mind, I suppose, especially with, like we're talking about, longer preps generally tend to work better unless you're already pretty lean to begin with. Obviously there's sliding scales on all this stuff, but yeah, I think that's helpful. I don't know.
It is, and it all comes down at the end of the day, just periodization, specificity, right? Like,
Yeah.
for me, it's funny, but like I could always relate stuff to just program design or stuff like
Yeah.
that. Because it is, right? Because if you're saving these songs for your top lifts or the heavy lifts, you're saving this motivation for these things. You only, you had different tiers of whatever it might be of where you need to go mentally, or what things you use. Like, these are things that we can use to our advantage. Again, maybe small to some degree, but in instances where the little things matter, like here, it can be useful. And if it does help you, that's something to consider too.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess another thought that's coming on along the same lines is like the diet hacks, so to speak, that you might use, right? Like, so it's, things like sugar-free Jello or diet soda or chewing gum or whatever, but it's also, like putting a bunch of xanthan gum and stuff, and you're making the big, spending an hour crafting this protein brownie or what, doing all these.
Gross, dude.
Yeah,
Ends up being so
they're
gross.
never. It's never that worth it, right? But we convince ourselves that it is in the moment. But all those things, I think, also similar idea, like periodizing how you do that stuff. And you don't have to be super, like, you don't have to plan it out per se, but just don't do all that stuff from day one. Because I think about it like saving some bullets for when you really need them. You don't just want to shoot everything immediately. So like, I think that helped me as well, right? Like I was very intentional about, I don't want to do any of these things until I need it, because I want to be able to use it when I really need it. I don't want it to already be desensitized. So like I didn't do any of those things for a long time. And then I was just sort of gradually, as my macros had to get lower, I would gradually make little changes. So like, for example, for dinner, I would often have like some casein protein that I would mix with just enough milk to be like a really, really thick. It's I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like the old protein sludge recipe, right? Shout out Buff Dudes. That's where I saw it initially. But it's crazy thick, right? And I mix in some oats and some peanut butter, throw some chocolate chips on top. It's incredible, right? I have it almost every day. It's amazing. It's still amazing. Anyway, so like as my macros get lower, it's like, okay, well, I can just do less chocolate chips, or I can get rid of the chocolate chips and the rest of it's still amazing. Or I can do less peanut butter and replace some of it with powdered peanut butter. Or I can do, instead of 1% milk, I can use skim milk, or I can use water. Like little tiny things to where the meal is still intact. It's a little different, a little bit lower calorie, but it's like smaller things rather than just, oh, I can't do this at all anymore. It's now I got to have the massive salad and the, sugar-free Jello and all this, So like small shifts like that were helpful. I was intentional about avoiding the massive salad because I was just like, that's kind of, I don't know. It just feels, I just don't want to do it, if that makes sense. Like I want to be eating like a normal human as much as I can. And so, which is just a personal thing for me, right? Everyone do what they want.
I mean, also spending 45 minutes eating is not everyone has the time for that or the desire. And it's
right. It gets expensive, like that salad stuff gets surprisingly expensive when you're going through that much of it, right? Mm-hmm. So like I was intentional about how big my salad bowl would be, and going through, and eventually it's like, okay, I need something to kind of get me through this craving. So it's okay, well now I can have a diet soda. Cool. And I would have like maybe once a week or something. Or then it just sort of gradually increased from there. But it was never excessive use of those things, which I think is serving me well now, because I'm not used to constantly having something sweet in my system, right? I'm not eating all the sugar-free Jello and chewing, this gum and having 3 diet sodas a day. And now I have to break those habits on top of doing all this other weird stuff. So I think that kind of thing was helpful to gradually increase the use of those things only as needed during the prep. And then now I think I'm in a better place because of that as well during the recovery phase. So just another thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about the way people visualize or conceptualize what a prep is. Because I think a lot of times, I'm not sure what word I'm trying to look for here. If it's either like overhyped or over romanticized in a way where it's like, it's going to be the most brutal thing. So you need to do all this like shitty stuff. You need to have all these things early on, and you can only be eating this protein sludge bark mixture and like huge salad bowls. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't, especially if we take a little time to learn about, how things work, or we reach out for resources, or we get really good coaches. We can see it doesn't have to be terrible, right? There's gonna be times where it's gonna suck a little bit. You're gonna need some pushing, but it's like, I think people just think that bodybuilding sucks in a way, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, right? It's I don't know. I just think we need to start just showing some more love for the bodybuilding, and then ourselves too, right? Because if we really give the time to, again, coming back to that respect thing of bodybuilding in ourselves, if we respect what it is, where it comes from, what it takes, and what it actually is necessary to get there, it's like, okay, I have a pathway, I have options, I have a toolkit, I got support, I have all these things where I'm just, again, increasing my chances of success to the highest level possible, right? And then from there, just taking it day by day. So
100%. Yeah, you're absolutely, because it's really not that bad for most of it, right?
I remember you just kept saying that, you're like, dude, I don't want to jinx it, but like, it's not that hard. And,
Yeah.
and again, that's not to undervalue that whole process too, but if you do the things right and you come at it with this, again, respect and love in all these ways, there's a very good chance it's going to be extremely bearable to some degree, right?
Yeah, at least for most of it. Obviously, the leaner you get, the harder it's going to be, and you're by the end, you're doing things that you would only do because you're trying to get on stage,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
But a big portion of it is really not. It's just a normal diet, man. You're just doing it for a long time.
Exactly, and then that's the difference of giving yourself that time, right? Because if you only gave yourself 16 weeks, very little wiggle room, if any, to experience that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna suck. And again, it all comes back to giving yourself more time. All these things. So it's essentially all just coming full circle. And I'm hopefully like people are recognizing that as we're discussing it. And it's like it can be done. It really can.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to suck.
100%. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think so. Like we said, I'm close enough to where like that stuff is still very front of mind, but I think I've also had the time and space to reflect a bit. And just like I was hoping, there's so much awesome stuff. Weird grammar.
English is hard, man. Honestly,
Talking is hard.
It really is.
There's so much awesome stuff that I've been able to kind of take away and learn from this, and I think some of them are small and some of them are big. So like small things, for example, early in the prep, I was traveling quite a bit. So it was earlier in the prep, so it was easier to deal with, but nonetheless, that I got some good practice with dieting while you're on vacation or while you're spending the day in the airport and on a plane, and things like that I think just the practice in and of itself is useful. But I also just kind of learned like you don't need as much food as you would think to feel good, if that makes sense. Like my standby meal was like 2 protein bars and an apple, and like that's not a crazy, I mean that's what is that, like 45 protein, probably, depending on the size of the apple, I don't know, 65 70 carbs, something like that.
Throw in some diet soda, and that's the Mike Isotel diet right there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. What is it, like, I don't know, 8-10 fat, something like it's not super crazy. Of course, as the diet went on, I wouldn't want to be having 70 grams of carbs in one meal. But early on, I could afford it. But like, even just, I guess what I'm trying to say is like easy portable foods. They're kind of small. It's not super filling. So like at the time, I would go in and be like, this is not going to keep me full. I'm going to be hungry and annoyed and all this stuff. It's fine, right? Like you don't need as much volume as you would think to be satisfied and go through life. So that was helpful. And just, the skill of going to a restaurant when everyone wants to go to a restaurant and saying, okay, I'm going to look at the menu beforehand and I'm going to pick out, something that's a little bit easier to estimate and, do that. Or maybe I'm just going to not eat the entire meal and I'll take some of it home with me. Or maybe there was a couple times I just didn't eat anything, right? Like I would just go sit there and be with everybody because the social experience is the main reason that we're going there. But then I don't have to eat. I can eat later, I have some chicken and sweet potatoes in the Airbnb. I'll go have that later, right? And I literally did that. So like that kind of stuff to practice was really good and a good takeaway that I can continue using moving forward. I think that the thought process we talked through earlier of just the commitment of like, this is just what I'm doing, and seeing how helpful that was, especially when combined with the foresight of like, what is the next phase of this thing? How can I prepare myself for that to be as successful as possible? How can I set up my environment to help set me up for success? Like we know that that's at least that last one is important, but just getting more practice with that was nice. And I think more interesting and more important, at least to me, are the bigger overarching things that apply to everything in life, I think, right? Like that's, to me, that's the beauty of bodybuilding, right? Is there's so much gold there. And I think one of them we touched on earlier, which was the process is amazing, man. The process matters more than the destination, but the destination still matters. And if you're going all that way, dude, enjoy the destination and do the best you can, right? And there's nothing wrong with caring about it. And I think that for me, getting that experience has been nice, because as we've talked about before, you and I both have a difficult time stepping back when something happens and we're like, that was awesome that I did that, or I'm proud of myself for doing that, or anything like that related to the outcome, you know. But having that here, I think, was such a nice, like, eye-opening moment for me of like, no, dude, like that's really damn important. You really got to make sure that you enjoy and appreciate this thing, right? Because you're like, a bodybuilding prep is, you know, you're only going to do a handful of them in your whole life, probably, right? At the most, some people just do one and stop. Most people don't do any at all. You know, it's such a rare, unique thing that you do want to stop and smell the roses while you're there. But I think that lesson can carry through to a lot of things, right? You know, hopefully applies to you as well as you go to cap off this PhD journey very soon.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's so cool to hear you reflect on that and say all these extremely important things, right? And again, going back to the values of the training arc and the authenticity of this bodybuilding, you've been such a leader in that avenue, in that space, and it's just we all really appreciate having you in there and sharing all that, because it is so important, and it's super important to me, and that I have this opportunity to have these discussions with you and do that, and it makes me feel so much more confident as I go into my first season as well. It makes me so much more confident and excited for the future of bodybuilding in general, because you're in it, right? People like you are in it, and it's so important, right? And you did the damn thing, you're doing the damn thing, and it's only gonna get better too, which is extremely exciting. So yeah, I think we really appreciate that from you. And then one other thing too that I think, I'm not sure if you're gonna say this, but I'm gonna say it because I think it's something you should be proud of too, is that you did such a fantastic job of fitting bodybuilding into your life, not fitting your life around the bodybuilding, right?
Yeah.
And making the whole thing around that. Like, dude, you're doing a PhD, you're an extremely good partner, you are an extremely good friend, you're an extremely good human being, and that didn't go away as you went into this prep, right? And that shit's hard to do. It really is.
It's hard, man.
Yeah, and the fact that you still did it, right, is nothing short to be, nothing short of, and it's something that's so important. So I think that's important that you should recognize it too. But I wanted to point that out because I noticed it, because I know a couple of times you were like, "Oh, sorry if I'm not there." I'm like, dude, I haven't noticed a difference. Like, this is you. Like, and I know that that's important to you, and that's why you upheld that. So yeah, I appreciate that too, because we need more of that too.
Thank you, man. Thank you. That means a lot to me, for real. I think that's another good lesson, right? It was just trying to learn how to do that. Because the one that I tried to do before, a lot of it, there was just so much less going on at the time. And so with this one, I was hoping that it would be one of those things where you're so busy that it actually makes it a little bit easier. And I think that helped. Busy in terms of like the PhD, the data collection, the coaching, trying to make some content, just writing up research paper stuff, doing all this, all these things. I think that helped a lot, just in terms of I'm so focused on this task, I'm not thinking about being hungry or whatever. But the other aspects of it, like juggling the time commitments of, I have all this stuff that's, it's so busy. Oh, now I need to do an hour of cardio a day. Oh, now I need to find 20 minutes to do posing practice most days. All this, there's so much just extra time commitment that I had to figure out. And then the sort of energy component of it, right? Like you're saying, friendships, relationships, etc. That was the hardest part, I think. Especially especially with my girlfriend, because I think that this so all of that, practicing, integrating this into your life, not letting it take over everything, managing the time, all those, like, that's a big takeaway for me in and of itself. But I think the biggest, like, most transcendent lesson that I got from this whole thing, similar to, like, the first time, the biggest thing was, like, I can do really hard things. I can do it, which was so empowering. This time, it was a very different lesson, just in that there was so much going on, and the deeper I got, the more, like, physical and mental fatigue starts to set in, right? And everything is still going 100 miles an hour. And there was no other option. My options were crash and burn, or learn how to slow down and compartmentalize and protect my energy in some ways, apply it where it really matters. And that has been an incredibly difficult lesson for me to learn. I have gotten a lot of practice with it. I've been working with an awesome therapist who helps me with it. My girlfriend helps me with it. And, some friends who, know what's up with that journey, that have kind of helped me with it and stuff. But it's been a hard lesson to learn, and I have been far from perfect at it. My girlfriend will tell you there's been a fair amount of tension between us during this prep, because I'm so mentally occupied elsewhere sometimes when we're hanging out or whatever, and I'm kind of not fully present. And straight up, like, it's threatened the relationship a little bit, right? Like, I just needed to be better. And so I've again had no choice but to try to learn that and be better, and I'm gradually getting better at it. And I think prep was ironically the reason why I'm getting better at it, because it's really, it strips away all the other stuff that's going on in your head, and it kind of forces you to slow down in certain moments. And so I tried to kind of tap into that same space, like when I'm at the gym and I'm trying to just be an athlete and just lift. Okay, well, I'm hanging out with Kaylee. Quit thinking about work. Quit thinking about that paper you need to write. Quit thinking about whatever. Quit thinking about that you're tired. Just be with her. That's all she wants, right? Like, and that's all you want. At the end of the day, that's what feels so good. And so, yeah, that's I think that's been the biggest thing that I got from the prep, was just that slowing down. What I always think about is board wipe, which is like a Magic the Gathering thing, which is clearing the slate, right? And so slow down, clear everything else out. What am I doing, or what do I want to do right now? And just try to really be there. And I'm far from perfect at it, but I'm getting better. And if that's the thing that I take from this prep, like, dude, that's what, because at the end of the day, I want a good life. You know what I mean? And so much of what a good life is about, at least to me, and I know you're really similar, is the memories, the experiences, the connections with people you care about. And that's taken me an embarrassingly long time to learn how important that really is. And I think that developing this skill is what will enable me to actually do that, rather than just saying it's important, but I actually am just a workaholic, actually doing the thing and truly internalizing how important that is. And I think that is the thing that prep has taught me. And I love that, dude. I love it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you again being so honest and open about that and vulnerable, because again, people don't often talk about that, but it's like you said, it's such a big part of it. Just learning how to be present. Dude, that's something we all need so much more of, right? Especially with just being so busy or caught up in that we should be busy or what we should be doing. It's just, you forget to see what's right in front of you. And with the bodybuilding, like you said, it had to slow you down so that all you could see is right in front of you. Because if you think too far ahead or too far behind, that messes you up. So it's cool that bodybuilding can provide that avenue, and just resistance training in general too, right? It's so cool. We can learn so much. And I think, yeah, as you've experienced and you're going to continue to experience, it's all about the growth, and it's cool. And I know it's only just starting too, so I'm excited to see how it grows from here. Right? It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, dude. It's I'm excited. I'm really excited about it, and it's so funny too that, like, it's so easy to be super present when you're working on writing this paper, or when you're working on a client's program, or you're responding to their check-in. Like it's so frustrating to me that my brain can easily lock on to being really present in those moments. But then some of the slower moments in life, or some of the just purely, you're doing this just for leisure or for whatever, that I think it's just the weird workaholic gene, right? But it's so annoying to me that my brain doesn't naturally just lock in on being present in those moments. And that's just like, I don't know. But again, like we said, it's a work in progress. We're getting there, getting better. And I'm with you. I'm very excited for further developing that skill and just seeing where it takes us, and actually doing the things that will let me look back when I'm whatever, at this rate, 150 years old, thanks to AI and robotic augmentation. I can look back on my life and be like, that was great. I had some great connections.
Just picture. I can picture it now. We're 150. Welcome back to episode 1412. What is it, Drake? And you're snoring in the background. Just like, I'm in it for that. So let's do it. But
yeah, dude, that'd be fun.
It's so much good stuff here. And again, it's great to see. Any last things that maybe you didn't get to say, or you want to say, or to leave us with?
How about a little callback that now future self can look back and say, you did a good job, dude.
Perfect. That's yeah. Again, appreciate you. Thanks for all this. Appreciate listeners for tuning in, and I'm sure they got so much stuff. So we all, again, appreciate it. And as always, we'll catch you in the next episode.